So I'll call the meeting to order. Barb's off this week, so Shannon, I think you're going to call the rolls, right?
Yep.
Okay, could we have a roll call?
Yep. Bill Brown.
Here.
Annie Adams.
Here.
Me here. Kara Dudek. Cynthia Hoyle.
Yes, here.
Audrey Ishii.
Here.
Susan Jones.
Present.
Jeff Marino. Sarthak Prasad.
Here.
And Nancy Westcott.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. Next is additions to the agenda. Does anyone have any additions? Then we have approval of the previous minutes. I do have a couple of corrections.
And I'm just going to note, Barb will be doing the minutes off these, so I won't be making the corrections, but she'll watch this later.
Okay, and I have mine written down so I can send it to her. But I'll share. Oops. This one. Okay, so on page 1, where it says Chris Lehman discussed concerns, the directions on the intersection were wrong. The sidewalk corner where his daughter was standing was the southwest corner of the western legs of Washington and Race Street intersection. On page 2, where it talks about that presentation I did, I think Barb was planning to flesh that out a little bit. She asked for my presentation, but then there was just like one sentence in there. So if it's okay with you guys, this is what I'd like to add. Bill Brown shared a presentation about visibility and changes in the crosswalk design at Washington and Race Street that were made about 7 years ago when Race Street was reconstructed in front of the high school. He showed a video of cars using the intersection from the perspective of a pedestrian waiting to cross about where the new crosswalk begins on the west side, and discussed the circumstances reported by the News Gazette surrounding a crash that killed a pedestrian in the new crosswalk in 2015. He showed an example of a triangular crosswalk referenced in training materials on the IDOT website that could be painted there to allow pedestrians to use the prior path in addition to the new path. Discussion ensued. Bill Brown offered to submit the idea to Traffic Commission. And then one other one, just on the sidewalk snow removal, changing Cunningham to Race Street. So the two sections that were left out of the previous ordinance were the corridors on Green Street from Race to Lincoln and University Avenue from Race to Wright. The part from Cunningham to Race on University Avenue was included in the 2019 amendment, so that's already part of the district. So those are the 3 changes I have. Did anyone else have changes? If not, could somebody make a motion to approve the minutes with those suggested changes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I think that was Sue. Is there a second? And seconded by Audrey. Could we have a roll call?
One sec. I'm new at this. I'm writing down the motions. Audrey was the second.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Bill Brown.
Yes.
Annie Adams.
Yes.
Me, yes. Cynthia Hoyle.
Yes.
Audrey Ishii.
Yes.
Susan Jones.
Yes.
Sarthak Prasad.
Yes.
And Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
That motion carries. The minutes are approved as changed. So next is public input. I see a couple of members of the public, Charlie and Kara. Do either of you, if either of you wish to speak, please raise your hand on your Zoom panel. I don't see any hands raised. I told Charlie that if we had questions during during our discussion of the PCC recommended bike sign areas that if he could be available to answer questions. So he will be available, it looks like. Okay, doesn't look like we have public input. So first is in unfinished business is Vision Zero activities and next steps. Cynthia and Audrey. Who wants to go first on that?
Okay.
Well, there's not a lot to report. Do you want to say something, Audrey?
Yeah, I have a little bit on the next steps, but you can go ahead first if you'd like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say two things. One, the mayor did send a draft of the letter of invitation for task force members, and I sent along some suggestions and also the list that Audrey had put together of potential task force members. I added in email addresses for the folks that we have on there that we have contact information for. And also, we've been trying to put out more PR about the wiki maps, which is up, and getting input from people on that. And I would also like to post the short survey that we had discussed previously. And I believe that we discussed that at this meeting. If I remember correctly, in SAR Talk, we were going to try and include some questions that were similar to what the university had and keep it short. So I'd like to go ahead and post that. And the other thing I would like to let everybody know about related to this is that the World Day of Remembrance is coming up in November. And so we're having some discussions about maybe just having a silent candlelight vigil and publicizing that to the community. It's too late to do permits for events. And I also don't think anybody has the time to organize an event. And so I think it would be easier and better to just have a silent candlelight vigil as an option, but none of that's not tied down in stone yet, but is in discussion.
Cynthia, have you reached out to Deborah about that?
Deborah reached out to me.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I've just a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. So I've just been heads down. So, okay. Thank you.
In the mayor's draft letter too, she did mention, or she mentioned that she'd like to have some students on the task force as well, high school and or college. So think about how we might, I guess we could just recruit people we know, or I don't know. We'll figure out how to do that.
There may be some students who are involved with SARTAC on the work that they did who would be interested. If not, we could certainly reach out to the planning program because I know there are students who are interested in these topics.
Okay. Thanks, Cynthia. Audrey, you want to tell us what you've been researching and stuff? Still muted.
I have a presentation if we want to share the screen.
Do you need permission?
I don't think so. I think I have it.
Okay.
Okay, so we talked last time about the strategies that we're involved in. Just as a way of introduction, I think we need to go ahead and proceed with some of the Vision Zero work items, despite not having a task force together. It'll be a lot smoother once we have a task force if we've gone through some of the topics that we'll be covering. So with that said, here are the Vision Zero strategies we talked about a couple months ago. The first one being the task force, essentially building and sustaining the leadership, collaboration, and accountability. And that includes professionals as well as community members and BPAC. And the second one is collecting, analyzing, and using data to understand the trends and disproportionate impacts of traffic deaths, which leads into prioritizing equity and community engagement. And the wiki maps and survey is an example of engagement that we definitely want to see. Fourth, and this is very important in everywhere that Vision Zero has been implemented, is managing speed to safe levels and then setting the timeline, which we do have the timeline, but perhaps we need some, we need to intermediate checks on how we're doing. And so I'm going to move on to that. And actually, I kind of have some good news on that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about the data. Vision Zero Strategy 2, which is collecting, analyzing, and using data to understand trends. And the process involves reviewing the data from RPC. That's our primary source. That data is really QA/QC'd. It's gone from the city to the state, back to RPC, our regional metropolitan planning organization, that further QA/QCs it and gets it into a standard format. We also have data from the Urbana Open Data Portal, which is really valuable for data that's newer than 2 or 3 years old, because generally when it's been through all that QA/QC, it's pretty old. We get the traffic data and also more detail by getting the data from the open portal. You find out what the Urbana assigned incident number is. You can FOIA the traffic reports and see exactly what happened. One drawback of RPC data is it is very standardized. They don't have the detail that we can get from the traffic reports. And then review the crash reports, starting with bike and ped involvement, because as we've talked about since the beginning, Urbana has had a disproportionate number of ped fatalities. And I'm going to just mention fatalities here because it's very clean compared to injuries. But in Urbana, about half of our deaths are pedestrian, which is a very high percentage. In Champaign, about 20% are. Also in the blue is the previous 10 years up to 2007. The orange is the most recent 10 years up to 2017. And you can see that Urbana, and the bars are represented as a per 100,000. So even though Champaign has more deaths, generally speaking, their per 100,000 is much smaller, because Urbana is actually less than half the size of Champaign now. So we've seen a significant jump, and this is very alarming, but it is only up to 2017. So if we, and just to put this in perspective for what some people may not, may think that Urbana is a small town and, surely we're doing better than some of these other places, but our rate, just a single death makes it 2.5 per 100,000 at a population of 40,000. And if you look at the column to the far right there, that's the rate in other cities. The asterisks are representing Vision Zero cities, but the rates are, so some are higher and some are lower. We're kind of in there with LA almost, and El Paso, which is not where I really want to be. We are better off than some places, a little better than Charlotte, North Carolina, but we're quite a bit higher than New York, Chicago, Boston, Seattle, Denver, and Champaign. So we can do better, but for us, it actually means going to zero on pedestrians. We can't have deaths. So let's look at the most recent years. We have, I did, for various reasons, I don't have 2018 except the RPC update, which wasn't exactly the same. So 2018 is just shown here just to give you a general idea. But we're focusing now on 2019, which is pre-pandemic, 2020, and then 2021, the present. And this is the all crashes numbers, the all injuries numbers, which they did drop in 2020, but at present they're projected to basically go back to where they were, all injuries, prior to the pandemic, and they didn't drop that dramatically. Well, I guess it is pretty dramatic. Yeah, it's a fairly good drop, but unfortunately it looks like it's going back. Deaths, the numbers are too small to relate directly, I think, to the pandemic. Now let's look at bike injuries, and we can see a dramatic decline in bike injuries. And this is where I'm thinking, maybe now these are really preliminary numbers. These are numbers right out of the open data portal. Okay, so perhaps there's something missing. This has not been finalized through the state and so on, but Right now, it looks like there's been tremendous improvement in pedestrian crash injuries and bicycle crash injuries. And even our projected is not going back to 2019 or 2018. The 2018, it's in parentheses because that's including all crashes, although almost all crashes with pedestrian bikes do involve injuries. Very few are just property. Are there any questions or comments about this so far?
Yeah, I was going to say, we know that people were driving significantly less than 2020. And so it'll be interesting to see what our numbers look like at the end of 2021.
Can you see the projected column there? I do have a projected column as well.
Mhm.
I don't know if you, yeah, the interesting thing too is that all injuries is still pretty high. So it's almost as though somebody is having an impact somehow. Now, it might not be good news. Perhaps the number of people walking and biking is down for some reason. But somehow our pedestrian and bicycle injuries are way down, despite
the
crashes
students weren't-
still being normal.
Yeah, I mean, the students weren't here in 2020, which makes a huge difference in how many people are walking and biking. In 2021, at least in the fall, we resumed in-person classes, but we didn't have that in the spring. So that still is not representative of a normal year in terms of the number of people who are out moving around.
Yeah.
I would definitely add that, I mean, I personally biked very little through many of these years outside. And right now, most people who work on campus are in like a blended work environment. So they're coming to campus 2 or 3 days a week. So that's also going to continue to affect the numbers through 2021. Because I suspect a lot of our crashes are from commuting.
Well, another reason that I'm hopeful that somehow Urbana is having an impact is that if we move to Champaign, and this is Champaign now, they haven't had nearly the significant drop that we have had. So, you can't help but be kind of hopeful. Now, we may have a lot more students, relatively speaking, or something. I don't know.
It's the amazing MCOR. It's the MCOR infrastructure. It's the
something. Somehow the crash injuries are returning pretty much to where they were in Champaign compared to Urbana. So we can be hopeful that maybe some of BPAC's work is bearing some fruit here. Anyway, this is just an idea. This is from the open data portal. I'm looking forward to seeing the data from RPC and being able to finalize these kind of numbers. But as you know, it takes a few years. Okay, so now we're going to go into the crash reports review. And why do we go into looking specific at the detailed reports and not just at these statistics? Well, of course, one of the big things is that in messaging, that personal heartfelt feeling is really key. Everyone knows that you can't make testimony just on numbers. So that's one thing that's important. And we do get those in the News Gazette stories. So when we're looking at targeting our messaging, the pedestrian crash that was at Vine and Elm resulted in at least one letter to the News Gazette that Bill sent, alerting people to all the several considerations that weren't covered, although there was some coverage, and a safety message to pedestrians and drivers. And at this point, with our low budget, that's the kind of messaging we have to engage in, and it's great. Maybe it's having an effect, as we just saw. The bicycle crash on Windsor raised community awareness, I think, in a pretty big way, at least about driving at the equinox, east-west, among other things, and also the fact that we have lots and lots of Paralympians in town and other athletes using hand bikes. So I think that was a great that they focused an entire article on it. However, the vast majority of crashes are not reported by the media, and you have to FOIA. Basically, you have to FOIA to get any details. Most of you are probably too young to remember a time before HIPAA, but before we had the Health Privacy Act, it was possible, and papers often did report on how the victims were doing later. There was often a follow-up story, which they could just get from the hospital, and that all went away in the 90s with the Privacy Act. I mean, you're lucky to get a name in some cases, so let alone how they're doing. And that's just, it's painful. I mean, it really is, because to have someone just disappear into kind of a memory hole like they never existed, it's hard to realize that it wasn't like that before. We had some follow-up. Another thing is the suggestion of safety alternatives, which is very important for our Vision Zero task force. And here's some examples: the pedestrian crash at Washington and Race that Bill talked about last week. Or last month, suggesting an alternative crosswalk alignment. Again, that was something, we both had some media coverage, and he also had a personal contact that was concerned about that. But then we look at the report to see, exactly what happened. The pedestrian crash on East Main at Dewey raised important questions about the speed limit, a topic that Annie had actually addressed long before the crash even happened, and was brought up by a member of the public as well. Bill talked about Schedule A and how the ordinances work, and there's questions about that are being looked into and may be able to prevent this happening again. This is really a whole topic in itself, because there was a lengthy conversation on this in BPAC well before the crash happened, and some of that needs to be revisited. We, as both BPAC and as a safety task force, we need to be able to get things done. We need to see things happen that are not just reactive, although in this case it would be, but that are proactive as well. And then the other thing we see by studying the reports is the lack of citations. There's a typical citation, for example, that happened on Windsor to the Paralympian is failure to reduce speed. Well, what that really means is the driver didn't see them because they were driving faster than they could see. It used to be called overdriving your headlights. And this was also in the case in Gifford, where a driver hit a bicyclist, a teenage bicyclist at night. Again, he didn't have any idea this bicyclist would be out there, but he was driving faster than he could see, and that is the ticket that he received. This ticket, I'm finding, is not typically given for any kind of pedestrian injury. If a pedestrian is not in a defined crosswalk with the light in their favor, they will not be issuing this ticket. In fact, they won't be issuing any ticket unless it's just incredibly egregious, like the turn on Main and Vine was. So it's something to be aware of. In some ways, I almost feel like pedestrians need to have bicycles so they can ride down the street and cross safely. And at least the driver will be cited if they hit them because the pedestrian essentially has no place on the street. It doesn't matter if it's a mile between crosswalks, I'm not even sure, we're not even sure if the implied crosswalks concept is fully understood. This is something that our Vision Zero task force is going to have to work on. Another one is changing lanes at an intersection. This is a ticket that can be issued, and it was not issued for the pedestrian who was hit, the teenage pedestrian that was hit at Vine and Elm. That driver clearly changed lanes within 100 foot of the intersection, and no ticket was issued because it was believed the pedestrian was not in a crosswalk. So these all indicate that pedestrians need to be better informed, both of their rights to ensure that they aren't cited improperly, but also the responsibility to realize that they don't have protection if they're going to step in the street without a crosswalk. Okay, so now for this year, we had 6 pedestrian, so far, we've had 6 pedestrian crashes with injuries and 6 bicycle crashes with injuries. And this is just a summary of them real quick. The pedestrian injuries, I'm going to let you look at this for a moment. I don't think you need me to read it if you have questions. And I think you can see the ones that we did have reported by the News Gazette. There were 3. One is the Windsor near Vine bicycle. That's the Paralympian that was rear-ended at 7 a.m. The Main and Vine was the minor and who was not in a crosswalk. Main and Vine. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a different one. That I was looking at the bicycle. That is the Main and Vine was a bicyclist in a crosswalk against the light, but a turning car hit him.
So, Audrey, what does that mean, right hook after honking at Green and Lincoln?
That one was pretty egregious. The driver honked at the bicyclist who I guess was on the road, not in the bike lane. So the bicyclist moved, okay, they're driving east. The bicyclist moved into the bike lane. And then they came to the green light and the bicyclist proceeded across and the driver went ahead and turned right in front of him, hitting him.
So
Yeah, I read that one too. It was the bicyclist was actually doing exactly what you're supposed to do if you're going through an intersection. It's a good idea sometimes. They did. It was for failure to reduce speed, which I think they could have probably done the lane change. They could have done the 3-foot rule.
No, I'm sorry. The Green and Lincoln, it was a hit and run. I forgot to write that. They did that and they departed.
The one after honking?
Yeah, the one after honking. The police cited what they should get was a hit and run. But
although I don't know what the honking had to do with anything, but
well, the honking is just proving that they were aware. It was not
Right.
an oblivious hit.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
They saw the person, they honked them into the bike lane, and then they turned right in front of them.
Okay, I got you.
I'm not sure which one it was, but they took off.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a hit and run I should have written.
Is the race in Elm a hit and run? I have a friend who was hit and run and put in the hospital by the library, and I don't see that.
There's a pedestrian one.
That's probably it. That's right.
Race and Elm hit and run.
Yeah.
Danny.
Yeah, that must be
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. The Lincoln in Nevada was both it's a permissive left there, not a protected left. So the car just turned to the left coming east on Nevada, turned north on Lincoln and hit the pedestrian.
So from reading this short information you provided here, in the majority of these cases, the pedestrian and the bicyclist did nothing wrong.
I'd
In the
say
majority,
that, yeah, there's a couple that they definitely did something.
Right.
The minor against the light, the bicyclist that came off of campus and went right into a bus.
Right. Yes, we've had that happen,
Yeah.
unfortunately, a number of times. And also the one on the exit from the Kickapoo Trail onto Main could have been the cyclist's fault as well.
They weren't certain. Yeah, so they did not issue a citation for that one because they were not sure who.
Well, and that one's that's a very, and they did what they could there, but the intersection's too wide. And so it's super hard and drivers also can't see that well from some of the approaches. So I think people have to be really careful. I'm very careful when I exit that trail and enter the roadway.
What does the difference in coloring mean? I see some that are
Yes,
white.
you're right. I
some
was
that are
just
blue.
wondering that myself. I forgot what I did that for. It definitely means something. And I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I was wondering if citations were issued, but then the one at Race and Elm didn't make sense because it was a hit and run. So I don't know unless they chased the driver down and found them later and ticketed them.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't remember what it was.
I'm wondering if it's basically no fault of the biker.
No, I didn't make that.
Okay.
I didn't make that judgment.
Okay.
It's,
No,
it's something very clear. But I don't remember what it. Oh, I'm sorry. It's gone to the hospital. The others did not go to the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sent to
All
the
right.
hospital. Okay. So that might change your perspective a little bit to see which ones the person was not hurt badly enough to go to the hospital. Okay, so the observations then and questions, 8 out of the 12 were in a crosswalk or bike path, not always with necessarily the right of way, but they were in infrastructure. 5 involved a vehicle that was turning, but usually, turning, it's usually at lower speeds, thankfully, thanks to our fairly sharp corners. 2 were minors, both on Vine Street, 1 biking, 1 walking. Driving faster than one could see was involved in the fatality and at least the 1 serious injury, possibly another one. We don't know how badly hurt a cyclist on East Washington was hit from behind by a car, and he was in the bike lane, and the car was partly in the bike lane too, apparently. And we know he was sent to the hospital for an injured leg, but again, no idea how seriously bad it was, no idea what speed the car was doing. And that was on Washington. Then that was at 6:30 p.m. So there wasn't really a visibility problem, you wouldn't think. And just 3 made the News Gazette. And, we know that the traffic, it appears the crashes are down this year. And I've always thought that I stay pretty informed. I've always gotten the News Gazette and read it. But thinking that this is a year that's something like half of some of the normal years, I was not fully aware. I thought the News Gazette was reporting on more things than it was. And you get the statistics from RPC, but those cold numbers just don't form the same kind of opinion in your mind. Okay, so looking at what we're moving back to, Cynthia brought this up last time, the Vision Zero pledge. And this is something that would be very specific to, it would really address these particular cases, yielding to the most vulnerable road user, being, regardless of the rules of the road, being aware that they're there, following all laws and regulations. I was just going to point out New Jersey, like a lot of other states, has a 25-mile-per-hour statutory limit for urban and residential areas. I was shocked, as were many people, to realize this. I thought it was more normal to have 30 like Illinois does, but no, it's 25 in many places. And in fact, you'll hear more about this later. People for Safe Streets just downgraded Illinois cities for bike friendliness because they had thought that we had 25 miles per hour. For some reason, and I've got some guesses, in our state legislature, they have resisted that idea. And of course it has to do with Chicago. Always looking out for pedestrians and never parking where you obstruct visibility in a crosswalk. So you see this repeated, awareness raising about pedestrians. And has it worked? They've had 0 deaths for 3 years, and they're somewhat larger than Urbana, about 25%. So what's next? I don't know if you saw this quote in the paper in August. If you're vaccinated, you're 4 times more likely to be killed in an automobile accident this year than to die from COVID-19. And of course, there's a message here for vaccination too. For those not vaccinated, the reverse is true, especially for those over 30. This graphic is from the city of Chicago, their Vision Zero, which is, again, the statistics that we've heard. And there's, people try different ways to make it clear, but 45 feet to stop is quite a bit different than 85, then 145, which, that's probably about the speed the driver was doing who hit Tonya Barnett on East Washington and did not see her. So one thing I would like to suggest is maybe we just because we have a task force coming together, if we don't have resources, we really can't do much with it. We can try to raise awareness at these meetings, but in order to take our message to the public, we need to have some support. So I would like to suggest that we ask the Urbana City Council to put Vision Zero on its council goal setting agenda, which is happening. I heard the meeting this week, I believe, or no, last week, I think it was. They're interested in doing the goal setting sooner than next spring. They're wondering when that's coming up. So I think we might want to consider getting this message to the city council and what we need to do to be there. So Vision Zero Urbana joining some of these other cities, many of which have much lower pedestrian death rates than Urbana has. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks, Audrey. Any questions? So I think that would be a great presentation too for the task force in one of the early meetings to kind of probably not the first meeting, but once you get into data. I think the other thing I was thinking of, I read some of the crash reports that Audrey sent today, I think it was, but just looking at those, you can imagine some discussions around some of those common, like the turns were into pedestrian crosswalks. And I mentioned to Audrey that we mentioned to each other how having automatic pedestrian detection would help there, because a lot of times you have a green light and you don't press the button, but if you press the button, you actually get longer to cross. And then it changes the crosswalk to walk, and then you're legal and you get longer to cross. But if you just have a green light and you cross, it could, turn red at any time. So
and it's
things like that.
Yeah, and it's likely that if you were hit, they may not get a citation because you didn't wait for your signal to walk.
Well,
and
I don't know.
Pedestrians not hitting the crosswalk button is extremely common. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a question for the police, I think. I mean, you're in this crosswalk, but it may be flashing "Don't walk." What are your rights there? And
no, when it's flashing "Don't walk," that means don't start. It's only when the hand is a solid red that you're not supposed to still be in the crosswalk.
So, I mean, if you didn't press the button, I guess it would be a solid red then still, even though the light's green. Except some intersections, if they have balanced traffic, instead of like both of those crashes were on side streets where there was no left turn signal, no left turn arrow, and the traffic wasn't balanced. But apparently some intersections, if there's balanced traffic from all directions, then it will automatically change to walk on a green light. But on these side streets, it doesn't do that. So then I wonder who's responsibility.
Shannon has her hand up, Bill.
Oh, Shannon.
Hey, so Audrey, or you mentioned somebody sent out crash reports. Was that sent to everybody?
No, Audrey FOIA'd them, and then she shared some with me today.
Should we maybe share those for the record?
I guess so.
That would be a good idea, would it? I don't know.
It's public record.
If we're discussing it, I mean, we should all be aware of what it is then.
Well, I would be perfectly fine with sharing it with everyone if everyone wants it.
Yeah, if it was FOIA'd, then it's public record. So
yeah, they've been redacted.
It's public record. That's why it was FOIA. I couldn't FOIA it otherwise.
So my question is, do you all want me to revise the pledge and post it on our People for Safe Streets website? We can certainly do that.
I really like the part of the pledge that you showed. Would you want to draft up a suggested one. I thought it looked extremely pertinent to the crashes that we're looking at right now. Of course, the ones that we looked at just now were related mostly to pedestrians and perhaps bicyclists too. I'm sure there must be some for that are more, just cell phone and so on and so forth. Others for drivers in general.
I was going to ask Cynthia, when that pledge gets shared and that crash data stuff gets shared, is it being shared? Like, did like the Prairie Cycle Club or Champaign Cycle, do they put that in their monthly newsletter, or like, how are we getting, like, you see the question I'm asking, like, what's our method for sharing that information?
I have sent it out. We could ask for it to go in eWeek on campus. The biggest circulation that we have is CU Bike Month. We have over 1,000 members there, and I posted it there, and I can post it again, but it'd be better if it went out to a larger population. I talked about doing a press release. And we could certainly, the committee could draft a press release and work then with Bridget at the city to send that out. And it would be nice to sort of dovetail that with when the mayor is going to send the letter of invitation out to the task force members. So it would if it made it into the media, that would help them understand, why they're getting a letter. Also, it would help.
So yeah, so maybe we could send an email that says, here's this here's a pledge, here's this crash data website, task force, and you send it to those 1,000 people that have signed up for Bike to Work.
We could send it to the Bike to Work list
maybe
too.
Yeah, email directly. It seems like
do that.
Well, again, getting a balanced representation is really something we can strive for. But it can be difficult. I mean, we've had some BPAC surveys before and have not always been able to make inroads everywhere. Certain neighborhoods will be overrepresented and others will be underrepresented.
Well, and maybe it sounds like we need to talk to our council members, because the council members have representation throughout the whole city. And I wonder, we can also, the city of Urbana puts out a email that goes out to a ton of residents. So I wonder if it can't also go in there.
I wonder if it could be dovetailed with the call for the quality of life proposals as well.
Yeah,
because it would be kind of neat to be able to both comment on unsafe situations and think about whether something can be done with a small grant to improve it.
Yeah, and like, the art programs, there's, the call to actions are often put in the emails that the city sends out, for the art program. And I see no reason why this couldn't be included with that, in that monthly email as well. So a few ideas.
Cynthia, did you have an idea about improving Fairview Drive or Fairview Avenue?
Yes, as several of you know, I was leading a group on a bike ride with several children, lots of parents and other adults wearing bright vests. And in the space between Lincoln and the fairgrounds, which I believe is 3 blocks, maybe 4. We had 3 different drivers pass us recklessly and dangerously. In fact, oncoming drivers had to stop to keep from having a head-on collision. And 2 of the 3 drivers then proceeded to run the stop signs at the intersection in front of us. And, I was aghast. And
only one of them hollered, "Get on the sidewalk" at us.
Yeah, there was that too. There were children in the group. And then Audrey also shared with me that there has been a lot of concern expressed by residents and also our state representative about driver behavior on Fairview. And so I was looking at the road. It's not a wide road, and they weren't speeding. They didn't have time to get enough enough up to really speed there. But they were very aggressive and driving recklessly and dangerously. So I was thinking, yeah, that's the kind of a stretch that if, we could get a traffic study done, I think mini roundabouts at those intersections would absolutely slow people down and help with the problem of people blowing those stop signs, because that obviously is happening a lot. And they're speeding around the park as well. And there are a lot of pedestrians there, but the hospital staff walking back and forth on Orchard, and people crossing there, and the park. I think there's room for concern. And apparently there haven't been that many crashes, but Vision Zero, of course, says that we don't wait until people are hit and seriously hurt or killed before we take action if we know that there's a problem. And clearly there's a problem. This has been an issue that's been raised over the years quite a number of times.
Yes, to the formally to the Traffic Commission, I would mention 2017, 2019, including by a sitting council member. So it just seems like a really, well, I won't say wonderful, but an opportunity for maybe one of those quality of life grants.
And the Illinois Department of Transportation, has that great website now about why roundabouts are so much safer, that there are less decisions made. You have less points of conflict. People have to slow down to go around them. So it's just, it's good to have them on board now. So I think that would also be helpful because they are interested in implementing them and getting them out there. And that would save a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of injuries, which would be great.
We would need a determination made if there's room for a mini roundabout in the intersection. And I don't know exactly where that, Bill, I don't know, maybe you have a thought where exactly that would fit into the proposal process.
I think the idea was to make the proposals for the equity and quality of life, go ahead and make them, and then they would go through an engineering review step. And at that point, if it wasn't possible or if it was outside the scope of those grants, then it would get eliminated. But I don't think there's anything to prevent you from making that proposal. I think that, and it would definitely be in one of the targeted areas. So I think at least from that perspective, it would have a pretty good chance. We do have on the other item coming up with the 3-foot fines, 3-foot bicycle signs. There is one plan for that area that wouldn't make a big difference, but it would be something.
Just think, Cynthia, would that have improved their behavior if that sign had been up? We can hope.
Okay. So yeah, thanks again for all the work on Vision Zero. This has been really good, and I think we have some. It's been good practice too to see what types of things we could talk about at the task force and what other data and other, mostly data that we need to bring those kind of things to fruition. Okay, so next is Cynthia's going to talk about updating the bicycle master plan. I think she had some ideas of getting an intern involved because there's well, you can explain it. I sent out the appendix, I think, with all the sort of evaluation criteria and places to make check marks. But earlier in the bicycle master plan itself, it does say that it's supposed to be reviewed every year.
Well, we had in that it should be updated every 5 years, which is where we are now. And
every year, I think.
Yeah, we're supposed to be reviewing it every year and seeing whether, what we've accomplished and what we have not, had time to get around to. And so what we were suggesting is that in order to sort of catch up, because obviously we've been short-staffed, although I saw in the newspaper that we've hired a new city engineer, that what we can do is ask for an intern. It would be a great project, especially for a planning student, and they can go through and take a look at and identify for us which things we have accomplished and which things we still have to work on. And, I can, show you the other thing that you could take a look at for contemplating this would be, let me see, where is this here? I think this is the right one. I've got the right. So are you all seeing the bike plan?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so this is chapter 11, and this has the recommended bikeway network. And so you could take a look at that part of the plan, as well as the recommendations that Bill sent, because we have accomplished some of these things. And, I think that those are things that we want to have flagged and identified. But then there are other things in the set of recommendations that we have not yet accomplished, and that we should take a look at how we could do it. And so, here's the whole recommended network, and it would be helpful to know if we can, sort of identify how much of the high priority items we have accomplished, and take a look at those metrics and see how we're doing. We'll probably have to figure out where we want to identify some additional funding. The city certainly dealing with some other issues now because of the census counts is going to result in a lowering of revenues coming to the city. On the other hand, we also do have a number of properties coming online that are going to start generating more revenue for the city in property taxes and things like that. So I'm not expecting the city budget to dramatically improve in the near future. So we may want to take a look at funding that's available to, or maybe try and get an estimate of what it would cost to do an update. But meanwhile, we could certainly get a student intern to help us go through and take a look at where we are and what we have yet to accomplish.
So it seemed like a lot of the things on the checklist in the appendix would be things that Public Works probably has on record on, whether some things were done or not. So that student should probably be someone that would be willing to work with Public Works staff to at least kind of get the low hanging fruit sort of and
Right.
check those off.
Right, absolutely. In terms of the infrastructure ones, Public Works will have that. I can share the screen too in terms, so in case people didn't have a chance to look at the recommendations. But you can see also, we had a number of things that involved working with, the police department and the fire department and some other issues, neighborhood organizations. So we've got, a broader range of people to try and collect some information from. And so those are all things that we want to take a look at. And you can see that they also involve things like working on business development, along with infrastructure. And so we have lots of things that we can take a look at here and organizations that we can try to partner with.
Okay. So
I've been thinking also, looking at the pedestrian master plan.
Mhm.
Number one, there is not a checklist like this, but I think it would have a lot of the same things on it. But it would be nice to either piggyback on this or have an intern that follows this to look at that also.
Yeah, we do have some items we have on there is a kind of a checklist. It's different. Implementation checklist, I think that we could certainly take a look at.
It's not such a nice laid out checklist, but yeah, I think there is quite a bit of overlap, but I think that would be good at also.
Yeah, if we have a student who has the time to look at both. Looking through the amount of stuff that we have in the bicycle master plan is going to be a pretty big lift, but we could certainly, I think what we might do is have them take a look at the bicycle master plan because it's older, and then move to the pedestrian plan. And then when we have them look at the pedestrian plan, we could also ask them to help identify the overlap.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
So do you have a idea for a source of this intern?
Sure. There are a couple of different options for us. I think what the first thing we ought to do is send it to the Department of Urban and Regional Planning and say this is an opportunity to work on this. As an intern, it's not a paid position, but the Community Learning Lab doesn't pay their students for the work that they do, but I would offer it to the planning students first and see if we get interest there, which I anticipate we will because students often have to choose projects. And then there's capstone projects that the graduate students do. So one of them could choose that as their capstone project.
I wonder if the city, I don't know if any of the staff that are here knows whether the city has any discretionary funds they could use for paid internships.
Well, Greg did hire an intern to do all of the work on the storm grates, and that was in the bike plan. And that intern identified all of the stormwater grates that needed to be fixed. And the city has been working on that. I've noticed I keep seeing storm grates that are improved over time, but I don't know anything beyond that.
Nafees wasn't hired just for that. He was a general intern for the summer. He just happened to have that project.
Okay, well, maybe I could check with the mayor and see if there's any kind of discretionary funds. It would, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to pay somebody.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay a lot. And you don't have to hire them as an employee. My Safe Routes to School interns it's set up as a contract, and they submit an invoice each month for the number of hours they work, and we pay them per hour. And that just makes it enormously easier for us because when you have to hire an employee, it's a big project to put them through all of that.
The township has a lot of interns too. I think that's kind of the way they work, is pay it just 10 hours a week or a certain number of hours for the internship or something. Okay. All right. That sounds like a good plan. Anything else on that topic? We never make any motions. Last week or last month, I was a little disappointed after the meeting. I realized that we didn't make any motions on two things I would have kind of liked to have motions on. Do you want a motion on this?
I guess it would be helpful if we made a motion saying we'd like to secure the assistance of an intern to review the status of the bicycle master plan and report back to us.
Okay, that sounds like a motion. Are you making that motion?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been moved by Cynthia to acquire the help of
secure the assistance of an intern.
The help of an intern, yeah.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Sue. Any discussion? Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams.
Yes.
I'm going to abstain on this one because I don't actually know if I can answer for the city on this. Let's see, Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishii,
Yes.
Susan Jones,
Yes.
Sarthak Prasad,
We didn't hear you, Sartat.
Yes. My microphone just, it's amazing sometimes.
and Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you.
Bill, do you want us to do a motion about something that, can we do that retroactively? Is that a thing?
No, if it has to be on the agenda to make a motion. I would have liked to have a motion on the snow, the snow shoveling areas, and also on the thing that I did send that Grace in Washington. I did fill out the form to send that to Traffic Commission. So it would have been nice to have a motion on that, but it would have to be on the agenda, so we can't do that.
Do we want to have a motion on the Vision Zero next steps that we wanted to add the pledge and the survey to the website? And was there anything else, Audrey, that's from what your presentation that we want to add?
Well, it's a question whether we would want to ask the council to make Vision Zero one of its priority goals, or if we should just do that individually.
I think coming from BPAC would be good.
Do you want to
Or
make
would
that
they say
motion?
every
we can
commission
discuss it.
wants its goals to be a priority.
Or should we wait for the task force? Because that was brought up in our discussion, was like actually have the task force put together to bring the council during the task force presentation.
I guess I would just say, I don't think it hurts to ask, even if they vote it down, just because at least it gets the idea out there. It starts promoting the idea that we are not only interested in gun violence safety, we're also interested in Vision Zero safety and other things, which I know are on their docket. So I think it's important. So I just think even if they say no, at least we asked,
Yeah, the only thing is I have a whole arsenal of arguments that I'm prepared to make as an individual. I don't know how we would word it for coming from BPAC. I mean, it might be a little too in the weeds for a BPAC resolution. But yes, I think that we do have to consider, in light of the gun violence that's occurring right now and so on. They have a whole lot on their plate, and COVID, and I understand that, but and that's why it gets in the weeds to explain.
Well,
even though
Audrey,
this has been a low simmering ongoing emergency, doesn't mean that we don't address it.
Well, Audrey, how about if we ask if you would bring back some wording for next month that we can approve and send on to them, asking this to be one of their goals? And it doesn't preclude us as individuals from talking with them. But I think we could have a simple ask for it to be included. And then those of us that want to talk to them as individuals can do that with the additional information that you have.
Well, if it's a simple ask, we could do it right now, really. What do you think, Bill? Should we, as a resolution coming from BPAC, do a simple ask, and then individuals and allied organizations, for instance, provide the supporting for, safe routes to school, for example, provide the supporting detail?
Well, I think a motion, just rather than a resolution, if you want to make a motion to ask council to include Vision Zero as one of their council goals, I think that would be appropriate, and it's not, it's not binding in any way. It's a recommendation, and even if it's a goal, there's no dollar amount attached to it. So until they decide if there's going to be a dollar amount attached to it. So I think that would be fairly straightforward, and if that's what, I don't see any harm in that.
Well,
Audrey, I was just say, Audrey, I just think it does fold into, I just want to make a correction. I do think this folds into gun violence and COVID and all things. This is something every resident in this city does every day if they leave their house. And it really does build stronger communities. The New York Times had a great article today about gardens and, streets. And this absolutely is completely connected to what we're trying to do. So I think trying to keep it separate, something that I've had a hard time with as an advocate of this issue is it's always kept as a separate issue when it is absolutely at the core of the issue, how we use our public spaces. I just want to be just clear on that. That's all.
I totally agree with you. I think this is a representation of violence that's become acceptable and quite inappropriately. I just am worried about how we do a resolution that would fold all that, when I have no problem with doing it as an individual, and I know all of you could as well. I'm just not, and should and will. I just am not sure how we do this in a resolution, other than just to make a bare ask. And by setting it as a priority, that means we're going to do something about it. And that does mean resources. I mean, this is the thing. The original Vision Zero resolution didn't call for any resources, and that has been a problem.
Yeah, and that's why we're not listed as a Vision Zero city, because until the city is willing to commit resources to doing the action plan, they don't feel that there's adequate commitment to be a Vision Zero city. And so I think we should go ahead and I'll do also. I suggest that we send a motion forward to the city council recommending that Vision Zero and the work of the upcoming task force be made a priority of a goal, I guess, is a goal of the city council for the coming goal development.
I see Shannon has her hand up. Is there a second to that motion first?
I second.
Okay, second by Nancy. Shannon, go ahead.
So just two things. I think just from this discussion, I think we need a little more clarity in our direction for this, because we are, as a group, all over the place with this. So having maybe something cohesive brought to next month's meeting to be reviewed, say like the Vision Zero task force of like Cynthia and Audrey, and I think Susan is also on it. Maybe a draft letter that might help guide us. That way we can input things like, violence, how Annie mentioned, or the statistics Audrey mentioned. Also, Carol's likely to be here next month, so she might be a good one to bounce it off of to see how to slide it in there.
Okay. Cynthia, you're muted.
So who would be here next month?
I believe Carol's coming back for the equal update.
Any other thoughts on, so we have a motion on the floor to ask City Council to make Vision Zero a goal, basically. Is that what you said? Okay.
Do we know when the mayor is going to be sending out the letter?
She's got it drafted, and so I think it'll go out fairly soon. But the task force is going to take a while to move forward. They're only going to be meeting twice or three times a year, and the way in which we discuss how the task force will function with the mayor is we'll probably have those 2 meetings a year as joint meetings with us, so that it makes it a public meeting. It doesn't take any additional time or additional meetings for us to do that, and that in order to get the people that we want on there, like police and some of the others that are really stretched thin right now, the schools, that we're not asking them to do the work. We are asking them to give us input and review the work that we put forward. And so, of course, the first thing we need to do is, give them the information, like the data that Audrey has pulled together, help them understand the concepts. And if this is a goal of the city council, then perhaps we would then have the opportunity to have some resources that would help move forward some of the work. Maybe we can also get a student intern to help us with some of the work so that we have an action plan that then goes forward, and that'll have a lot more specifics for the city council to look at and approve when we get to that point. But I anticipate that that's going to take us some time.
Yeah, it would be very difficult to put together a meeting without some staff time to issue the invitations and come up with the agenda and the literature that needs, the handouts that need to be created and so on. Bill, if you would share the screen again, I could show that last slide, that slide in my talk that does mention the city council goal setting. It had a wording that maybe could work, something like it.
You should be able to share your screen.
Oh, okay. So it was the last slide. So this was some very simple wording, but again, our present council has not seen any of our talks or anything. They only have the resolution, which is definitely something. I mean, they may or may not, likely not, read it, 5 out of the 8 of them. So
I think something that is very important is transportation equity. Right now our streets are designed for people who can afford a vehicle, who can park a vehicle, who can drive a vehicle. And as a city, we are putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into moving a minority of our population around. And I don't think that's something people really understand when they look at our streets. So I think
that's a huge.
I just feel like I know transportation equity is incredibly important. It's why we're worked up about scooters. It's why, we're worked up about trying to make sure people can safely walk, bike, and transit where they need to get to. So that's really what we're talking about here.
Maybe for the motion, it might be better if the motion was to have us make a presentation to city council, and as part of that ask that Vision Zero be placed among their goals and priorities, and then that way there would be an opportunity for them to ask questions and for us to use some of this presentation and some of what I did before to renew people's interest in it and to let the new council members know more about it. It might be stronger that way than just as a motion to ask them to set it as a priority.
Well, I think that when we sent a motion like that forward to them, we have done a presentation. When we did snow removal, we did. When we did Vision Zero, we did that. So I think that we would want to make a presentation to them. And we could certainly, you could put it on the agenda, ask for it to be put on the agenda for us, Bill, and we can make a presentation.
Because that's what I was going to say. This is kind of like data. Only it's even more threatening than data because we're accusing them of being car culture. Like this does not, I would feel defensive reading this if I were a car culture person.
Well, this isn't what our resolution is going to say. I mean, what our motion would say. Our motion just says we'd like for them to make Vision Zero one of their council goals, and we can put together the presentation to show them the information.
That's true. I understand what you're saying, Susan. We wouldn't put those 2 items there. That's kind of what we're trying to communicate to, is where, what would be communicated. But also the equity piece that Annie has suggested, we need to put that on there. But yeah, it would not be in the resolution, but I think so. If I understand it, Bill is suggesting we instead move to make a presentation to the council and therein ask that it be made a goal rather than send a bare resolution.
Yeah, I think so. Is that a friendly amendment?
Well, I thought we had a motion on the table to ask them to make Vision Zero one of their council goals. And us going and making a presentation, then asking them to do it doesn't carry the authority of our motion. So I guess I don't understand. It seems like if we make a motion that it be Vision Zero may be made one of the council goals, and that we take that motion to them with a presentation making that request.
Okay, I think the understanding's there.
Okay.
I think I'd be okay with that. Just with the understanding that there's a lot more that we need to explain without just sending a motion to them. Okay, shall we vote on that? Any other discussion? See your hand's still up.
I just forgot to lower it.
I'd just like to say the other thing about transportation equity that people always forget is, like, in order to drive a car, not only do you have to have a lot of resources to purchase a car, you also have to be 16. So by completely designing everything for people who are 16 or older and own a vehicle, it's really, I don't know, I'd honestly be curious to know what percentage of our residents own cars.
Well, the number of licensed driver as a percent of the population is really, really low. It's, and thus we have a lot of unlicensed drivers out there, but
That might be a good thing to include in the presentation, to just say, our streets currently are for 20% of our population.
Well, actually, the majority of people have a driver's license, so we can't make the statement that it's minority.
I was curious about, like, vehicle, like how, like, it's more like
that's in
We're
the
getting a
census
little off
data.
the topic, I think,
Yeah.
and we have other agenda items.
yes. I'm
And
out.
that's in the census data.
It is, we can get that, but it's also
Yes.
just concerns population, and we have a lot of meter traffic too that use
is that
our-
including children as well, though? I mean, I think you have to include people
It's
who
the
are
number of
young.
cars owned per household.
Okay, let's take a vote on that motion. Could we have a roll call?
All right, Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams,
Yes.
me, yes. Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishi,
Yes.
Susan Jones,
Yes.
Sarthak Prasad. We cannot hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Next is reports of city officials, staff reports. Anything from you, Shannon?
John Siemens, the new city engineer, he starts Monday. I cannot right now promise you any of his time because he will be spent catching up on like 3 years of no city engineer for the most part. So for right now, just consider I'm still the only engineer in terms of BPAC hours. So he has a lot of work he's got to do on other things. So
Shannon, what's his background? Like, who's he?
he's coming from Farnsworth, which is one of the bigger engineering firms that's office in town. He has both an SCE and a PE, so he's a structural engineer as well as a professional engineer. He has some transportation background, structural, drainage, wastewater, stuff like that.
Okay,
And that's all.
great. Thanks. The only report I have is that I did send that item. I filled out the form for traffic commission on the item we discussed last month about the Race Washington intersection. And I watched their meeting this month, but they had some other items, so hopefully it'll be on in a future meeting. I did also, I wanted to mention to Sarthak to check on, I know there was a groundbreaking for the new ACES Center that's going to be built in the Arboretum, and that's kind of right by the gravel path that people take from Orchard Downs across. So if you can, could you check on sort of staging plans there and make sure that they're going to make some accommodation for people to continue to commute that way somehow. I know there's kind of another offshoot from that gravel path. You can get down to the parking lot, but I'm not sure exactly where that building's going to be and how much space that's going to take. But if you could look into that a little bit.
Yeah, I can ask. I can ask about that. I know
Okay.
that they have a bike plan. Oh, sorry, a bike path planned. Or I've heard. I shouldn't say I know. I've heard that there is a bike path planned for, like, on the Hazelwood Drive that goes from.
Yeah, I think the long-term plan is to build something there, but I'm a little bit more concerned about the year or 2 or 3 or
Yeah,
whatever it's
yeah,
going to take
yeah.
to construct the building.
Yeah.
How people, because people get used to traveling that way and then
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
to
I
make
can.
changes.
I'll try to ask. Like, I'll ask Stacy if she knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's it for reports. Oh, there weren't any other committees. I think we covered Vision Zero pretty thoroughly. So new business, 3-foot passing law. Let's see, I'll share. Let's see. Well, first I'll share this little piece from the bicycle master plan, just to show sort of, people have been thinking about this for a long time. So even when this was done in 2016, they had some idea that there would be an approved sign at some point. It wasn't approved at that time. But now we do have one. It's not this one. You saw that in the letter that Champaign County Bike sent out. But this is in our bicycle master plan. It says the city of Urbana and township should work with Ride Illinois and any other entities to install the most appropriate signage upon implementation of this facility type. I think one of the reasons this explains that people didn't really understand the share the road signs very well. Apparently they thought that meant that they should drive in the same lane that the bicycle is in and share the road that way instead of giving and taking, or giving more. So I just wanted to show that that's in our plan. So I'll just go ahead and share the map. I assume everybody read the Champaign County Bikes letter. I could go through some of that, but I think in the interest of time, I think I can just go to the map and we can kind of talk about some of these recommended. So this is a map of, I think I sent you the link to this, where Champaign County Bikes has recommended that those 3-foot passing signs be placed. So any place where they thought that it was common for motorists to get too close to cyclists, or where there's either no bike lanes or fast speeds, things like that. So I think probably I'll just go through them one at a time. And so this is a race near Mumford, and see if anybody has any comments on it. So that's looking south on Race Street. I think one of the issues here was the bike lanes kind of divided up by these longitudinal lines in the concrete and stuff. So people end up having to ride. If you don't want to ride in the gutter, then you pretty much have to ride pretty close to the edge. And that puts you pretty close to traffic. And when there's lines on the road, it seems like people don't think they need to go across the yellow line. So it would be kind of a nice reminder to them that they still need to give you 3 feet, even though you're on one side of the line and they're on the other side. You need to have 3 feet there. So that was, and that's one place I've noticed where I do get buzzed quite a bit by people coming by pretty close. Any other comments on that location before I go to the next one? The next one on Race Street would be South Race Street, right at the edge of city limits. That one, so this is a northbound on South Race Street. So this is just coming out of, this is 40 or 45. Do you remember 40-mile-per-hour speed limit? You're muted, Audrey.
If it's in the city limits, it's still 30, but then they put a 40-mile-per-hour speed sign right as the hill starts to go up just outside the
Oh,
city.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Although
As soon as
I think the sign is actually in the city limits, and I don't know if Shannon has a comment about the county putting a sign within the city limits. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I will give you some history on that. It used to be 40 all the way up to Windsor. And I mentioned this to Craig. I don't remember if it was at BPAC, but I do remember mentioning it to him that I was concerned that the speed limit was so high next to the park and Clark Lindsay. And he went out and maybe he even took it by traffic commission, and the signs were changed and the speed limit was lowered. And I don't know exactly where the line is. The sign might just be an inch on the outside of the city limits. And I don't know whether it's the county or if it's a township that owns the road at that point.
It's the township.
Okay.
So anyway, it's a transition area from higher speed to lower speed, and there is a hill just south of here. So I think that was part of the justification. It also seems like maybe Charlie would want to comment on that, if they deliberately sort of, how do I?
Well, I will say I've had people pass me going up that hill when they could not see who was coming. And it is very frightening. And that has happened to me a number of times southbound.
Well, do I understand the sign location is where? Just outside the park, Meadowbrook Park, or?
It would be just inside the city limits, which is right at Meadowbrook Park.
Well, so that would be instructing people to give you 3 feet as they go up the hill?
No, this is northbound.
Oh, northbound. Okay, I'm sorry.
So I think Charlie can talk now, but was one of the objectives kind of to catch people coming into town too?
Yeah, it's this is Charlie Smythe speaking. Yes, the issue is reminding people that given this is a narrow road and that they need to give the many bicyclists that use this route 3 feet. It's a very popular route. I will point out that we IDOT is putting up 2 signs on Highway 49 around Homer Lake. We are meeting with Jeff Blue and Richard Thompson from Urbana Township next week to discuss additional signage on Homer Lake Road and the ones around town here. We've also asked Mr. Thompson to address the issues related to the hill, because there's nothing there that tells people, hill blocks view or anything like that. And I actually submitted a video of a driver going northbound that nearly took me out because he was busy passing 2 other bicyclists going northbound and was basically passing on the hill where he couldn't see. And so he had to pull in between 2 bicyclists just as he got within 10 feet of me. So it's a dangerous hill. So there's additional things that the Urbana Township needs to do there.
Okay.
But it is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and there was a move when I was on City Council a number of years ago to make it a 40-mile-an-hour road all the way up to Windsor, and Council did not go with that. So it stayed at 30 miles an hour. So that 40-mile-an-hour speed limit sign is probably inside the city limit, but it's on the university. It's on the university side of the road. It's hard to say where it should be. It probably belongs further south on the road.
Yeah, I think you can see it here. I think
That's it. Yes.
The limit sign, and this little thing here is probably where the road transitions.
So it may be east of the Urbana city limit then.
It's
I
south
mean,
of it.
west of the Urbana city limit.
Yeah, there
Well,
needs to be a 30. There, one thing is I'm not sure where the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit is for South Ray Street. I can't remember if there's one just before you get to the city limits here or not, but I sort of recall that there isn't anything.
Okay, well, let's move on to, we have several others to look at. So let's go. We have 20 minutes left. So this is coming into town on South Philo Road. And there it is 45, so that's a little higher speed limit. There is a little bit of a shoulder there that I tend to use as a bike lane, but it's not really a bike lane. But even if you're in that, it would be hard for somebody to pass you and give you 3 feet without going over the yellow line. So I think that's kind of one thing, is that if you really want somebody to change lanes, then maybe having a sign there is a good reminder. This is southbound up by Monocle's, kind of. It's wide here and then it narrows, but it is a high speed area, 45. Then farther up Philo Road, this is kind of by the Family Video. So this would be a southbound one. It's where the bicycle lane ends here. And then you're sharing the road here. And there's a multi-use path over here, but it's not very convenient for cyclists. And there's a lot of cross streets and entries on and off of that. And I'm sure that, once Shannon starts looking at some of these, some will be more doable than others, and probably have to consider whether there's existing posts to put it on and where you're going to put the post and what kind of view that blocks. So there will be a lot of other considerations, but I think this is a good start to think about where we'd want them. So what's this? This is on Washington. So this is coming into town, westbound on Washington, where the bike lane ends at Pfeffer. And then it's not a city street for a while. Is that right? It's a township or county, I guess. Township probably. When you're just south of Scottswood there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, there's a stretch there between, there's bike lanes up to, let's see, from 130 up to Pfeffer. And then there's bike lanes along Washington up to about here, I guess. Yeah, that's probably why this is here. So that's probably about where the bike lane ends. So this is.
I was saying, yeah, that one as a driver is very confusing. You're just kind of like, what's going on here? So
The eastbound one here.
I would say either just that whole area when I'm driving my car and I'm paying attention, of course, to the bike infrastructure, but I'm not convinced if you're not a paranoid driver like I am, you would be as concerned. So that's just all I'm saying. Both ways.
Yeah.
Like the previous slide you were showing, it just ends. And then I'm like, whoa, and I'll be like, hey, there was a cyclist. We got to be aware there's someone coming up. And
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think there's some bus stops in here too. And the thing I've seen a lot is people coming down, is this Dodson or is that Smith? Yeah, Dodson. Coming down Dodson and then just zigzagging over and going down Smith without really looking too much, but I guess that's a little different issue. Okay, and then up on Main Street, this is, this is on the Main Street spur there, a little farther west of where the recent crash was at the Kickapoo, just west of there. As you kind of come southwest into town off of University. So it's a stretch between the Kickapoo Rail Trail and where the bike lanes start on Main Street, but it's narrow for a while.
We already have a bicyclist may use full lane sign there.
Yeah, I think Charlie was suggesting maybe that you could replace one of those.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of that because I think that having that there is really important. Otherwise, they're going to think that we should be way over to the right. and they should give us the bare minimum of 3 feet to pass. And I really would like to see the full lane sign stay there.
I think you can still talk, Charlie. I didn't do anything.
Well, I was just going to point out that there are 3 bikes may use full lanes in that section. And that's why I'm saying that
So
there.
we don't need 3.
We don't need
Yeah,
3, exactly,
I
yeah.
can go with, I could go with that.
I think one question I have is these signs apply to pedestrians as well. Is that correct? That pedestrians need to be given 3 feet?
I think they do.
I thought it was just for bicyclists.
The statute is for both pedestrians and bicyclists, but the signs just mention bicycles, but the
Right.
statute does apply to both.
Yeah, I know. I'm so concerned because I just drove East Main, which Annie's spoken of several times, but there was a pedestrian, right against the line. There is no shoulder there, and it's a narrow road. And, all I could think is I would hope a pedestrian deserves 3 feet as much as a bicyclist. It's just
But the signs don't say that. Oh.
Yeah.
But maybe that's something we need to make clear. I don't know. The pedestrians, the streets are like a killing ground for pedestrians. I don't know.
This is the eastbound one on that same stretch. So this is pretty similar to the situation down on Washington where you're going past an area that's not in the city limits, but we have some places we can put signs on each side that are in the city limits. So it's kind of taking advantage of those. So where there's no infrastructure, the bike lane runs out here and then picks up farther east. I included some of the township ones they recommended. Charlie just wanted me to have those on the map. So there's one on each side of this overpass on High Cross Road where it gets really narrow and bad visibility, and people often try to pass you on that overpass. And then another one in the township is up on Airport Road at, what is that? Brownfield, yeah, Brownfield and Airport. So there's a bus stop there too. I don't know if there's a way, I didn't see a bus stop sign there. So maybe if the bus stop wants a sign, we could
if they
put them both on
stop
one
there,
pole.
Bill, they have a sign if there's a bus stop.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I probably missed it. And then this one was, they were a little vague on this one, said pretty much somewhere on this stretch of
Country Club
Road, yeah. Kerr on that side of 45 and Country Club Road.
Yeah,
not
people
Kerr.
drive like that's a racetrack.
I forget what that one's called. Yeah, Country Club Road. Yeah.
And that's the township road too.
So yeah, no sidewalks there at all.
No, it's, yeah.
And people do go pretty fast there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those wouldn't be in our purview if they're outside the city limits. There might be some place there. You could put one inside the city limits. It'd have to be somewhere in there, probably by Cunningham Home. So then there were a few west of Crystal Lake Park. This one, I think it was, again, they just said McCullough to Kohler area. So I was guessing they meant this area that kind of goes up a narrow spot. People would sometimes take this up if they have to get across, have to use Lincoln to get across the interstate. A lot of times you'll take your bike up this way, and so you don't have to ride it on any more Lincoln than you have to.
Yeah.
And then this turns into Bradley too. So it's a fairly fairly popular way to get from Bradley down into the Crystal Lake Park area.
And that's a township road too.
No, that's Busey Woods is in the city. So if you put
So Kohler is a city street.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, except
Got
for this little stretch here.
okay.
And then Fairview, that's the one we talked about earlier. Somewhere on this stretch, this is King's School right here. This is parking for King's School. So somewhere between King's School and the park. And there are bike lanes here, right?
Yes, there are bike lanes from Goodwin to Lincoln.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Goodwin. This is North Goodwin going toward Bradley up there.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's kind of straight east of King Park. And there's no bike lanes here. There is this multi-use path that is sometimes on the west side of Goodwin and sometimes on the east side. So,
Well, north of University, it's all on the west side.
oh, okay.
South of University, it's on the east side, part of the way, and then it's on the other side. Yeah, so
It looks like there at least would be a pole there to put a sign on.
mhm, mhm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it does switch over though to the east side, looks like here, if that's accurate. Around Ellis.
Oh, you're right. I guess I've never ridden it that far north.
So it does kind of go back and forth. I think that's why I don't
You are
usually
right.
ride on it. I just stay on Goodwin there. Is that it? Did I miss any? I think that's it. So any comments on any of those? Any other areas that you think Champaign County bikes might have missed, or?
I think the most important ones are the ones coming into town.
Right. Right. I agree. I mean, Main Street going from downtown Urbana to Lincoln, but the other ones are, I think, just more important.
Well, Fairview might be worth a try, given so many people's experience there, which isn't funny, but it's really terrifying. I don't
Okay.
I believe that his letter said these were also with heat maps, right? That these had been checked against heat maps for regular bicycle usage.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Were the heat maps like Strava heat maps, Charlie, or were they somehow get commuter?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So that's one of the issues is that the Strava and Ride with GPS heat maps really only address recreational bicycling. They don't really catch commuters unless they're using some kind of smartphone measuring thing with Strava or one of the other packages. So it's not completely representative. But there is Strava data that I have access to via Ride Illinois that is more accurate and better than what you see with Ride with GPS. So and the city should have access to that as well. So it's provided to not for profits and cities. So that can be used. All of what's been suggested has the caveat of engineering judgment to be involved in that. And it may be I think the one on Kohler there. I'm not sure if that was also. I think that might actually have been in reference to the Fairview Kohler intersection there by the corner of the park. So you might have something for Fairview going eastbound and something for Fairview going westbound on both sides of Lincoln. So it's the east side of Lincoln that has no bike lanes. The west side down to King's School does have bike lanes. So again, it's like I said, this is where engineering judgment comes into play as to what the best use is. And then you don't want too many signs either, because then you're saturating and people are ignoring it. There's an IDOT memo that talks about guidance for this.
Yeah, I
So-
think I sent that out. So yeah, if you've read the IDOT memo, it does mention that you don't really want to overwhelm people with too many signs. You want to place them strategically.
Some of us do use our bike apps for all of our commutes, but you're right, it is more recreational than commute.
But even with recreational, I mean, if I go out on a recreational ride, I start in town and I have to get out of town, and I usually pick the best route I can. So
Yep.
it still is pretty representative of, you know,
Yes.
heavily trafficked bike routes.
Yes, I use the same routes for commuting that I do for recreational cycling.
Any other comments? Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what the next step with that is. I don't know if that's something that we should submit a form to Traffic Commission, or if, I guess Shannon received your letters. So Shannon, do you have any suggestions on what the
Right
next
now-
step would be?
It's already under review internally. I don't have any answers right now, so, but I
Okay,
can see it is under review. I'm just gonna echo some of the things Charlie brought up, like sign clutter is a big issue. Lack of clarity in signs is a big issue. I mean, I didn't even realize these were supposed to be for pedestrians too. So that adds to the unclarity. That is not a word. It's late. I'm sorry. The lack of clarity. And also like some of the locations, it's not evident from just looking to Google Maps, but like culverts and geography make it difficult to place a sign anywhere near the road you can read it. Like High Cross Road actually has fairly deep culverts. So it's, the signs are about as big as, a speed limit sign, and which speed limit signs are sized for speed. These are not. So you push them far off the road, you can't read them. People are going to ignore them. They're just not going to pay attention. And I do want to add this one thing I did find in my current research is IDOT, MUTCD, Illinois State Police, the Government Accountability Office, all recommend public media outreach as opposed to just signs, because the signs by themselves aren't clear. So like you have billboards on buses or regular billboards or something on UPTV or CI Living. Those actually they found go a lot farther for furthering education on this than just slapping up some signs and being like, figure it out. So.
okay. Yeah, that's good suggestions. Okay, let's need to find my agenda. Okay, so I guess we're to announcements.
Mhm.
Are there any announcements?
Well, I mentioned November 21st is World Remembrance Day. Also, for fun, and those who are interested, we have a witches ride scheduled for October 30th. And so decorate your bike, decorate yourself, join us for a ride. We've got tables reserved outside at Riggs and on the porch. So in case it's a little chillier. And they have food trucks and non-alcoholic beverages, so come and join the fun. I also have a bicycling for adults 1, 2, 3 class scheduled this coming weekend. If anybody has friends who want to improve their bicycling skills, that's a free class, but you do have to register.
Okay, thanks. Other announcements?
Cynthia, can you send the information about that bike ride?
Yeah, I sent it to Jake, but I can send it to you too, because I sent him the bicycle class information. I didn't send him that. There's a Facebook event for the bike ride.
Yeah, I'll post it on our social media and the website as well.
Yeah, the bike class, I think probably is.
I've posted the bike class.
You did that one, okay.
The one that's on 23rd, I think, right?
Okay, I'll send you a link to the Facebook event.
Okay, thank you.
Is bicycle 123 related to traffic skills 101? The one you used to give?
Traffic Skills 101 is a much more in-depth and a longer class that qualifies you to go on to the league cycling instructor seminar. Bicycle 123 is we only ask people to do the bike safety quiz, the Illinois bike safety quiz. And then we do 2.5, 3 hours on bike. And it's basic stuff. The Traffic Skills 101 class has a whole class online and then 4 or more hours on bike. And I take people in the Traffic Skills 101 class on roads like University and through intersections like Main and Vine. And the 123 class, I don't do that. They don't have enough training or experience from that class to go out on those sorts of roads. So this class is lower level for people who want to improve their skills, but I had people who would sign up for Traffic Skills 101 who then they would start going through the online class portion and they get intimidated and say, I don't think this class is for me, because they just wanted to be able to bike more comfortably on streets. They weren't really interested in doing commuting level biking. Some of them, I've had people who wanted to do commute biking come to 123. I've had people come that were hit by cars and wanted to improve their skills and had ridden their bikes since they'd been hit by a car. People came here from other countries and wanted to learn the rules. A variety of people come, but it's a much less in-depth class.
Okay, so then for next topics or future topics, I think we kind of started talking about the separation or awareness between bicycle lanes and sidewalks, especially for visually impaired. Is that something that we could research a little bit more and put on?
I've got some links and I'll send an email to you and Shannon and Nancy, and you can take a look. But there is some information out there. Some other people have taken a look at this. This is an issue that's come up elsewhere, of course. So yeah, we could put it on. And we can take a look and discuss it. I don't know. I don't think staff's going to be able to do anything for the near future on it, but.
Okay. Any other future topics?
I'd like to look at the, you did a talk a while back, maybe a year ago or less, about speed limit setting. And I'd like to follow up with more information on urban and residential speeds and the effect of speeds. I'd have to do some research.
Okay.
See how effective it is, but
comparing them to other, okay. So residential speed limit.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it really shocked. We just did a trip out west this summer and I was shocked. You're doing 80 miles an hour and you get into a town and it's 25. And I thought, oh, they just want to make sure we see what we can buy in this town. That's all this is about. And then I find out all these states out there have urban and residential speed limits of 25 miles an hour. It wasn't a, devious choice on their part. They simply believe there's no need to speed through towns in some 19 states or more.
Okay. Any other future topics?
The city of Urbana has 25 bike racks and we're.
Okay, I think we have that on there. Did you want to go ahead and try to do that next month if we have?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, we're kind of just like in this long email discussion about it. So I think it would just be good to share the email discussion and just kind of talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
Because we initially we were under one understanding of what the situation was, and then there was another understanding, and now so it's sort of, there are 25 bike racks. That much we can all agree on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like that's probably enough. Is that it on the agenda? Yeah. Okay, well, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.